Susanna Goodin. I came in 92, so come August it'll be 23 years. Intro to philosophy, and then every fall I teach a history of modern philosophy, and modern to a philosopher means from the 1500s through the 1800s. It doesn't mean what we're doing right now. And I typically teach more of the early modern. And early modern philosophy is people like Descartes, Locke, Leibniz, Spinoza, Hume, Kant, Berkeley. And they get divided up into the rationalists, which is Descartes, Spinoza, Leibniz, and the empiricists, Locke, Berkeley, Hume. And so one fall I'll teach the rationalists, the next fall I teach the empiricists, rationalist, empiricist. And then in the spring, I will always teach a grad seminar that corresponds to what I taught in the fall. So if I'm teaching the rationalist, Descartes, Spinoza, Leibniz, then in that spring I will teach a grad seminar on either Descartes or Spinoza or Leibniz, and then the same for the empiricist. And then I teach in the honors class, I teach the various ethics courses, environmental ethics, I've taught business ethics, I've taught medical ethics, feminist ethics I teach. And then in the summers, not every summer by any means, but I teach a course called The Philosophy of Sex and Love. I received my bachelor's from Texas Tech in philosophy, and then my master's and my PhD from Rice University in Houston. It's fun, and I think it's important. Teaching philosophy is teaching people how to think, more so than here's a body of information you need to know. It's think about this, think, rethink, and teaching them how to be evaluative of their own beliefs and things they hear. And one, I think it's incredibly important, and I love it, and I also just love philosophy. So even when I'm just teaching them, here's what you need to know, I love it. Their discussion, and I call on people. It's not open up like, okay, who has this answer? I hate that with a passion, because everybody just sits there. I go down the row and point, you, and then you, and then you, and you know it's coming. And I let them have a pass option. No one has to talk in my class. There's no penalty for not talking. If you come to class unprepared, you say pass. If you're shy, you say pass. If you don't like me, you say pass. And I just go on to someone else. But what I find is, when somebody says pass, I then can say, do you really want to pass, or do you want a leading question? And if they almost always choose a leading question, unless, they're not feeling well, they're sleepy, they hate philosophy. None of it is intended to humiliate them or, anything like that. But if they'll play, and they'll say, okay, give me a leading question, and give them a leading question. And then what's interesting to me is when they give me a wrong answer. If they give me the right answer, it's like, okay, everybody write that down, we're done. I hate right answers. When they give me a wrong answer, then it can be, why do you think that? And then I can connect it to what it should have been and find out why they thought it, and I can then unpack from their brains and pull this stuff out. It's kind of gooey. Why they're thinking incorrectly about something. And that's so much more useful than getting a right answer. And so how do I teach? I put it on the board. Here's a framework. Here's a hook I want us to discuss. And these questions I'm asking them are not, what does this mean? But why did they say it? And why is it important? And when you got it wrong, why did you get it wrong? What was going on? What were you thinking? And how does that fit in? And I'm teaching them to think. No one ever should use PowerPoint. It turns students into passive drones and allows professors to reuse the same lecture. Bad. Papers. I don't ever do group work. There's no group projects. I think those are vile. Exams are going to be in class, short essay and answer, but that's only for freshmen. Everything else are papers, and there are tons of drafts they do beforehand. if they choose. I don't require them, but they can hand in drafts and work with me as much as they want until the paper's due. Actually, to me, what's important is knowing why the question got asked. Because, does God exist? That's actually really easy to answer. It's either yes or no. How would you go find that out? I have no idea. But to me, what's important? What do you want to know when you ask that question? And what would an answer look like? I can tell you, yes, no, there's an answer. That doesn't give you anything. So if I can get students to understand why philosophers ask what's real, and get them to see that that question matters. So what's more important, having the answer or knowing how to find the answer? I don't think either are that important. Knowing what the question is trying to get at is what's important. Philosophy is very different than most courses.
Yes.
We're the outliers. Yes. And Bertrand Russell, very famous philosopher, said the value of philosophy lies in liberating doubt. If you have an answer, you don't keep thinking. So if my question doesn't have an answer, you'll keep thinking about it. You get an answer, you're done. Because I teach them to think. And that would apply to anything they do for the rest of their lives. And what has always astounded me is students saying, wait a minute, we can question that? And then, just to get them to question it, you can play with people's minds all day long, but to get them to see why you need to question things you think you know, and that applies to any and everything, that's an incredible skill that alters how they live. And so, do they need to know what St. Thomas Aquinas said were the 5 ways to prove the existence of God? No! So I don't know that anyone needs specific philosophical content. I think it's fascinating. It's part of our intellectual history. It's good stuff to know. It's what it is to be educated. But they should take my classes not because I can tell them the difference between formal essence and objective essence, which I can do because it's a scholastic notion that Descartes used in his proof for the existence of God. I don't think people are going to benefit in general by knowing that distinction. But if I can get them to know how to think in a logical, philosophical manner and learn to investigate and pull open and to figure out how to examine, and not just, I'm going to question everything, but then how to start evaluating once you've emptied your mind, how to evaluate what to put back in, that applies to everything. I just 10 days ago, 2 weeks ago, was at Houston, back to Rice University. My dissertation advisor, the man who directed both my master's thesis and my doctoral dissertation, retired. And over the course of his career as a professor at Rice University, he had 10 PhD students. And in philosophy, it usually takes between 7 and 9 years to get a doctorate. So you work very slowly, and so you don't do a lot. A professor would not have a lot of PhD students that he works with at any one time. This particular professor had 10 of us over the course of his career, and he was so amazing that at this reception for him, 8 of his 10 from throughout his career came back to Houston just to see him, and the other 2 were calling in, and we were sending pictures to him and completely in touch with him and staying in touch. And we all got to see each other and hang out. And for a professor to inspire that degree of reverence, honor, genuinely liking this guy, appreciation, and he taught me how to write. I was in a PhD program, of course I know how to write, but he taught me how to write, and he taught me how to read, and he taught me how to be careful about thinking, and also he taught me how incredibly important it is to be kind to students. And I'm a good teacher, but I fail that I'm not always as kind as I should be, and he is what I aspire to. highly doubtful nature of the whole edifice I had subsequently based on them. All right? So, first person. What does this mean? Picture of one.
Basically what it means is that lots of things that he thought he was sure of, like for example, not that it says it in the book, but like he was sure that the sun would come up. Say it doesn't come up, and he's all of a sudden thinking about all these things that he thought that he knew for certain are actually not true.
And he had built upon it.
Yeah.
So he starts out with some beliefs, he accepts them as true, and then he builds upon them. Okay? And, next person, what is his concern? Very much what the first person said. They may not be true, and so the whole thing, everything he believes may be in doubt. Alright? Next person, look at the next sentence. I realized it was necessary. You don't have your book. Next person. I realized it was necessary once in the course of my life to demolish everything completely and start again, right from the foundations, if I wanted to establish anything at all in the sciences that was stable and likely to last. What does this sentence mean? Break it down. There's a lot going on. You don't have to do all of it. Just do some of it. The row behind you will do the rest of it. Row behind, break yourselves.
Well, like, break down what you think is true.
Okay, but there's so much more. And that's the smallest part, right? I realized it was necessary, at least once in my life, to demolish everything completely and start again right from